Hello.
Hey,
Hello,
Chris.
hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Good to see you. Thank you for giving us some of your time.
Sure.
We appreciate it. This is Matt. You probably saw him at SDSU. So we just want to give a special thanks to Karl from State for introducing us. And so thank you for spending some time and to talk with us. We appreciate it. And we were getting nervous beforehand, so we were excited. But yeah, we're stoked to talk to you, Chris. And we know that you just got off the road. I believe we were exchanging some emails. You said you were in Europe.
Yeah, I was in Europe, but then I was just on the West Coast again, actually.
Oh wow, okay. So yeah, you've been moving a lot.
Back and forth, yeah.
What were you doing?
I was doing some gig. I did a gig at the Mount Hood Jazz Festival, and then a couple gigs kind of near San Francisco.
Great.
Yeah, I was with a trio with Ruben Rogers on bass and Kendrick Scott on drums,
Oh,
which
nice.
we'd never played as a trio before, but it was super fun.
Cool. It went well. Yeah, you had a good time.
Definitely.
Nice.
Wonderful.
That's great. Well, sounds fun. We have a few things we want to ask you, but we kind of just wanted to pick your brain, and
Okay.
maybe we could start kind of. I had a question that I wanted to ask you that isn't directly related to playing, but it is in terms of I know you have a family, you have a professional life, you have your private life too. But how do you work as a professional musician and kind of maintain both lives? And I think so many people ask you about your professional life, but
Yeah.
I'm kind of interested in how the longevity and how you can prepare as a musician to have a career in doing what you're doing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a balancing act. I guess everybody's life is to a certain extent,
Right.
uh, that was one of the nice things about the pandemic, really, was just that for the first time since I was maybe 18 or so, I wasn't just going on the road all the time.
Right.
Um, and of course, this is the job I've always wanted to do. I mean, I started playing the saxophone when I was 10. I never really even considered what to do for a living. I just kept playing. So very happy that I have the chance to do it. Um, but it like anything in life, it's there's always a difficult part to that, and the fact of just being on the road a ton and not really having a steady routine,
Hmm.
and with family life and everything. Yeah, it's definitely, it's been a big challenge, not just for me, but for my family, of course. So um, you learn to take care of yourself, and to you just kind of have to keep focused on who you are and what you're there to do, and 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 you know see if it's possible to stay sane. I've been trying to remind myself to keep my stress level as low as it was during a lot of the pandemic, when I'm rushing to try and make a flight, which
Right.
is because the connection was late, and all this stuff. It's there's a bit of um, you know
Yeah, you're working hard.
finding yourself to take a deep breath.
Yeah, I get you. I can relate to that. I mean, sometimes I catch myself timing my days out where I'm trying to go from one thing to the next, and I'm just like, man, you got to stop trying to be everywhere all at once. But I can see what you
Yeah,
mean.
it's true. It's true. I need to remind myself of that too. I mean, for me, it's like, okay, I'm on one coast on one, and the other coast and the next day, and then going to Europe. Um, but it's all things that I want to do. I mean, I try and remember to say no to things that I don't want to do. So
I see what you mean. I mean, I know during the pandemic, I felt the same way. You had a moment to kind of focus on just one thing or just a couple things.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
see what you mean. I mean, Matt, did you
yeah.
feel that way?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I took that time to really focus in on technology and kind of getting that together. I was pretty terrible with it, and still am to some degree. But I wouldn't necessarily have had the time to do so, if it weren't for that. And now we're, able to, do this type of thing. So,
Right.
It's really wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. I wrote a bunch of music, but I'm still terrible with technology.
So, Chris, I wanted to ask you, you're to me, it seems like you're so prolific writing music. How, I'm really into like comedy. So I watch these guys create these whole specials. They work on it. They go on the road. They're testing it out. They record it. And then, it's very similar to music where they release it and then it's a little different because they can't really go tour with it anymore in a sense. So they start over. I mean, music is somewhat similar in the sense that once you record it, it's on, it's there. How do you kind of restart that process? Sometimes it's nice to feel like that, I guess, but also, how do you go on to the next project? We were just listening to your most recent project with Zakir, I think his name is, on Tabla.
Zakir Hussain and Dave Holland.
Yeah, and it sounds, it was great.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I love that sound. I had an old roommate that played with a tabla player, a guitar player. So it was really, that was the first time I had ever heard it. And to hear you guys do it sounded really great.
Zakir is the master of, he's just unbelievable musician, and it's it's a tradition that uses a lot of improvisation, but obviously the whole system is set up very different than jazz. There's enough meeting points, that it feels like a very fruitful collaboration. But I do that. Dave and I are both always going, wow, how is he doing that? Unbelievable. We're going to be back on the road in the summer. So, a lot of these things, maybe you make an album and then you don't have a chance to do it for a while and then you go back to it. There's a number of projects like that, which is nice to be able to
take a break. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. It makes it feel fresh again when you know, and then if you do it for long enough, you have a few of these kind of things. It's, there's a lot of variety, But I guess you're asking about like, how do you first start to conceive a thing like this?
Yeah, it seems like, for me, sometimes when I'm writing a new tune, I just have to make sure to sit down and make time to do it, and be creative. It's not like, you have to put it, I've noticed that you have to put an effort into it. It's not just going to come to you. Like,
yeah. I think that's the main thing about writing, same as being an instrumentalist is you just have to practice doing it.
Yeah.
So you have to just keep writing. I think the more you write, the more you see what the parameters are, and your growth as a musician just kind of naturally happens that way. And if you just don't put in the time to do it, then you won't go through all these parts of the process, even though some of them can be very frustrating when you just don't see a way forward. You're not sure what you want to do. There's a kind of a certain time to not necessarily put that many notes on the paper, but to think about it and let it marinate for a minute, and then try and forget about it all and just write whatever comes to mind. Because if you wait and go, this needs to be the best thing ever written, then you're going to end up with a blank sheet of paper. You just got to do something. I think that something that's important to keep in mind is that in general, it's kind of easy to come up with just a musical idea. This is something that as improvisers,
right?
Every solo that we do, we come up with 50 of them, so it's what you do with it, and it's how you work with the material, and there's always a million ways to go. So the way that you choose to go is going to put your personal stamp on it,
Right.
But the editing process is what takes a lot of time for me, and I try and give myself enough time before there's some kind of deadline that that I'm able to go down all the blind alleys and see what doesn't work and what does, and figure out what I wanted to say. and then it kind of ends up shaping itself over time with a lot of uh, you know, wailing and gnashing of teeth. But you finally figured out.
Do you find that thinking about having certain players in mind for a composition is helpful?
Very much so. Yeah. I mean, usually that's the situation that I'm in now, and I've been in that situation for a long time. Is that I'm thinking of a particular band when I'm writing a piece. Now, you know, during this hiatus, whatever, I actually did just write a bunch of tunes, and I wasn't really sure who would play it, but that was kind of an unusual situation. But now I feel like I have all this material to work with that I can then tailor to whatever
Mm.
you know.
Did the big band project come about during the pandemic?
That was from before actually, and I had rough drafts of that. Like I actually performed rough drafts of a lot of that music um, in London at the Royal Academy in maybe 2018 or 19. You know, but I did have a chance to go back and not completely rewrite everything, but um, but there was a lot of revision
Sure.
since then, which you don't always get that kind of time. You don't always actually want that much time. That was maybe a bit much, but I I made the attempt to just make it as good as I could be, and then let it go. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it's a wonderful project. Do you think there's going to be more on the horizon with big band, or
Yeah, I'm hoping to be able to release that in some way, you know, and I imagine that I'll write some more big band music. Um, I'm beginning to work on another piece that I started during the pandemic that I'm going to perform next year at SF Jazz, which is going to be with like a uh, chamber orchestra
nice?
with a jazz quartet,
Mm.
which is going to be me and Craig Taborn and Scott Colley and Brian Blade.
Oh, wow.
So so that again was already, you know, I kind of had sketches of a piece, but now I'm going back and revising everything, and I'm sure that that'll take some time. So that'll be the next large ensemble thing, which I'm very excited to do. I've only written one other piece for orchestra, and that was a few years ago, and I I had the chance to hear it performed a couple times, and that was it. So, and I felt like that was a bit of a learning experience. Like, okay, this is how it sounds. You know, you imagine it in your head, but of course, working with an orchestra isn't something that's really in my experience the same as working in a big band. You know,
Sure.
I have a fair amount of experience, especially as a younger musician, being in saxophone sections, but none being in an orchestra. So it's a bit more foreign territory, but I've studied classical music so much uh, have it in my head. So hopefully I'll be able to make it work. We'll see.
Wonderful.
So, Chris, I got to ask you because I'm a guitar player. So, I love guitar players. Metheny was, just here playing at the Shell a while ago, and I saw him at Copley. But I wanted to ask you maybe, what was your experience like playing with Pat? How did it differ in contrast with Jim Hall? And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, what's it like playing with a guitar player, and just how was it doing those shows and playing with them?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, you know, that the thing about Pat, he has a very strong vision of what he wants to do,
Mm.
you know, and it's very clear,
Mm.
and it kind of, I mean, everything makes a lot of musical sense, and I think he knows how to use the talents of the people that he's hired. You know,
Mm-hmm.
he's just very good at this. Um, uh, you know, Especially with the kind of larger ensemble thing with the Unity group.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's very much. I mean, there were a lot of sequences for one thing that that were happening underneath us and stuff like that. So it was a bit maybe more the same from night to night than with a bunch of other groups that I've worked with.
Oh, I see.
But such a well constructed framework.
Yeah.
That it was a challenge for me, to kind of inhabit that every night. It felt kind of like I guess it's always like this, but maybe to more of an extent. It's like there's a certain, it's like you're doing West Side Story, and this character has to do this, and it has to be like this, and there are variations from night to night, but the story is the same, so it has to.
I see what you mean.
To kind of fulfill that function, Playing with Jim, is much more kind of an open-ended, maybe normal jazz setting.
I see.
I would say, where it just maybe wasn't as tightly scripted, in a certain sense. So that's another serious kind of challenge is when you have that kind of freedom, what do you do with it? I think it takes a lot of knowing not just how the song goes and how to improvise on it, but just making choices about, okay, when to come in, when to not come in, how long to play, how, all those kind of things. I think, maybe more of the responsibility would fall on me, which is of course interesting to me, because then, that's a serious musical challenge, that I welcome, even though I think I probably didn't always make the right moves, but he was very, very patient with me, as many of the leaders who I think I've worked for over the years have been extremely patient, now that I think about it. And
actually, Matt had a question a little bit on that from.
Yeah, I was just curious about your time with Red Rodney and Bill Watrous and Bill Crow, and
it's like working with all these greats. Yeah.
Working with these amazing players at such a young age.
Right.
I was curious if they had any imparting words of wisdom, or if they treated you a certain way, if you felt a certain way back then, or if you were just one of the cats per se right away.
Well, the folks that you mentioned, I think were all on this jazz festival that was in Columbia, South Carolina, which is my hometown. So that's where I met Red. That's where I met everyone, of those folks. And then I started playing in Red Rodney's band almost as soon as I moved up to New York. I think that was maybe 88, 89, and then I graduated high school in 89 and moved up to New York. So I definitely learned a lot playing with these, with that generation of musicians. There's no way that I would be the musician that I am without the experience of, having had the chance to play with a lot of these heroes. Going on the road with Red, who would hearing my sound where it's Charlie Parker's sound on the record, it's just kind of unbelievable experience.
Incredible.
As a 18,
of course,
19-year-old musician, and then as time went on, working with the Mingus Big Band and all the folks that were doing that, working with Steve Swallow and Paul Motion and Jim and, on and on and on, Dave Holland, Herbie and, Schofield. I feel like just kind of unbelievably lucky that I've had the chance to share the stage with these folks, because it's one thing to hear the records, and you can learn a lot from that, and it's inspiring. And then it's another level when you see them play live, which I didn't always have the chance to do when I was in South Carolina. Not all that many folks came to town that often, so it was a big deal. But then to share the stage and kind of hear them react to what you're playing in real time is a huge lesson. And there aren't necessarily too many things that I can recall being said directly as far as advice and things. Um, but every moment on the bandstand and off, really, with all these guys and more, um, was an education, you know, and that continues to be. I mean, every time you're on the bandstand with musicians that are at a high level, you know, is a chance to learn something,
Hmm.
Absolutely.
and to broaden your perspective, you know. And I think that's one of the lessons. I mean, that's one of the lessons that I realized, like, when I'm around Herbie, you know, is that um, he's he's soaking up all he can from everyone he's playing with.
Mm.
At this point, most people he's playing with are much younger than him, you know, but he's I mean,
He can't turn it off.
yeah, and in certain ways, maybe he's younger than all of us because he's
Yeah, I did.
constantly, you know, open,
Yeah.
Mm.
you know, which is that's what you hear in the music. I mean, there really is no hiding. Like, you end up being who you are anyway. You know, you can try and pretend to be somebody else, but it doesn't ever work. And it's the people who kind of find a way to really just be themselves and communicate that at a high level through their dedication to music. I mean, this is why Pat is where he is, and
Yeah.
Jim Hall and Herbie and Dave Holland. You know, it's taking, you know, just, you know, who they are, and figuring out a way to communicate that through music, you know, and people respond to it. It's
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there's a lifetime of learning, because every second that you ever encounter is going to be a little different than,
Hmm.
you know, you're in a different place than you
Right.
were before.
Now, I think that's a good way of, I mean, an outlook, a good way of explaining it. I mean, I know a lot of my students are going to watch this, so I think that's a great way of explaining, you know, this art form. I mean, you know, a lot of times, especially, you know, when I'm teaching at school or something, you know, they want to quantify everything so much, and how do I do this, and
Right.
and it's what's the answer, and I think it just comes from a curious place, you know. They just
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the job of a young musician, is to try and figure out how to
right.
do it. You know,
Hmm.
how to get whatever the big piece of metal in your hand or whatever it is, you know, to make the sound you imagine it can make. You know,
Hmm.
which
But
is, there's a million little micro things
of
that you
course,
have to study, but I often find that looking at it from the big perspective, and just maybe listening to someone who you respect, and just trying to get that sound, try to
hmm
copy those notes and play it in the way that they played it, might actually get you closer than
right.
parsing it, you know, into ever
Hmm.
and smaller quantities. I just find that I mean, at least with this style of music, that just doesn't usually work as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point. I mean, I think that could be applied to many different aspects of life, honestly. So, and
Yeah,
that's one thing I love about you know, music, and I mean jazz specifically, whatever you want to call it. But that's one thing I love about it, is just those intangible things, you know, that you can't really. I mean,
yeah.
it's everything you're saying. It's interesting. I mean,
Well, I mean, there's the idea too, that, like, what you want to achieve is, you know, some kind of a flow state, right? You
right,
know, and if you're a runner, you know, and you're thinking about every,
right.
you know, fraction of an inch between you and the finish line, you're probably not going to be that fast.
Hmm.
You know, there has to be some kind of just motion, that the motion itself is what you're trying to get at.
Right,
For sure.
definitely. Matt, do you have you want to ask him one of these? This guy's got a list over here. He came prepared.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh yeah. I was curious about your time with Steely Dan
Oh yeah.
and recording Two Against Nature,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and everything with that. That's an album I've been listening to pretty much since it came out,
Mm-hmm.
and certainly it's been inspirational through the years. Just curious about your time with that group.
Yeah, I mean, that was a call that I definitely never expected to get. And I had listened to Steely Dan, you know, when I was a kid. I was a fan of their music, and especially, I mean, as was interested in jazz too, I realized, okay, yeah, there's a lot happening in this. I mean, I'm a a fan of all kinds of music, and some really well done pop music is a fantastic thing. I was always such a fan, but I never expected to share the stage with them. For one thing, that wasn't really my focus, and another thing is they never toured. They hadn't really gone on the road much since before they had hits. They just never did it. And then I guess I think it was in 1993 they decided to go on the road. And I think maybe Donald Fagen had come to the Mingus Big Band. And I got my number from Randy Brecker. That's what I heard. I don't know.
Cool.
Nice.
But all of a sudden I was called to be there, and especially since it hadn't happened before. Like we were doing sold out shows at Madison Square Garden. I mean, it was nuts. It wasn't anything that I ever expected to do. Now again, I mean, it wasn't maybe the most freedom as an improviser that I ever had, but just playing that music was so fun. I mean, it was just so so well done, and it was a great group of musicians too. At the beginning it was Peter Erskine on drums, and it was Dennis Chambers. It was all kind of top-notch folks. And then I decided after a year or two that I really did need to be a jazz musician. And I remember, I mean, I think they were going back out on the road, and I had to decide between going back out with them or touring with Paul Motion. And I really wanted to play with Paul, so I thought, well, this is nuts, but this is kind of what I want to do, so I'll just do it. And it was a few years after that they were working on the Two Against Nature album, and they called me to come in and play a bunch of solos, to my great surprise. And in a way that was even more fun, because that was a chance to work with them in the situation where maybe their highest level of creativity was coming about. I mean, they were always like recording in the studio, making something in the studio. They were probably more comfortable doing that than they were playing live. They had more experience, and being a part of some new Steely Dan tunes that I had never heard, and they would show me the lyrics and kind of explain maybe what function they thought the saxophone solo would have. It was at the very beginning of being able to record things digitally, and so which meant basically an unlimited number of takes.
Oh, okay.
So I did lots and lots of takes. And I kind of got the impression, I mean, there's all these stories about folks coming in to do solos, and then nothing they did ended up on the record. So I had no idea if they would use any of it or not. But I got the impression that they were just kind of enjoying the process and hearing me do another take, and, hey, why don't you think about this on this next take? Okay, yeah, let's give it a try. So it was very fun to do. It was very enjoyable. I'm glad I got that experience to work with them in that way.
That's really cool, man. I mean, you're kind of everywhere. I think it's really cool that you're into all sorts of music and
very diverse.
Yeah. Just what we're doing right now with technology and stuff, and you were kind of talking about, they were doing, the digital tracks and kind of technology coming in. And what do you think, I mean, as a working musician, how do you deal with the new technology? I mean, it seems like you're one of the people that kind of is embracing it and is kind of using it. I mean, I'm just curious what you think of, the internet and just all this new stuff happening.
Yeah. I mean, I actually don't think of myself that way. I think I'm, a Luddite. I'm really not that much into like, social media. I don't really post much.
Right.
I kind of made a decision that, okay, well, maybe that's not my strongest suit, and I'd rather just work on music and do, which is a bit of a luxury, I know. I mean, there isn't any way, to not engage with that in some form, you know, for me also, but especially for young musicians, I think.
Yeah.
You just really have to, that's something you have to be comfortable doing. And I'm, you know, I sort of think it's a bit of a shame because, you know, maybe a lot of the folks that their biggest strength is making music aren't necessarily also the people that have the biggest strength in terms of promoting what they do, you know. So there's something nice about other people doing that on your behalf, on an artist's behalf. But we all have to do it in some way, you know. I mean as far as just, you know, using technology, I mean, like it's an amazing thing now that you can record in your house, you
Right.
know, and have it be basically a level of quality that you can release. You know, that's really changed things a lot. It's allowed for a lot more flexibility, you know.
Yeah, I was just listening to your the Underground album again, but you have this on YouTube. There's a really cool live video of you guys at 55 Bar.
Yeah.
And
you know, there was a guy who made a documentary of that band.
I mean, it's really cool.
That was a great thing like that just kind of, you know, fell in my lap because he was a fan and he was a filmmaker and he wanted to do that.
It's really cool.
Yeah,
I really like that whole aesthetic of like making an album or just in having visuals. It's just cool. You guys, and you know, you're there rehearsing and you're talking.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was before that. I mean, now it's kind of a normal thing to have some kind of video.
Right.
But that was a rare situation where again, I didn't really do anything.
See, you're good at it. You didn't even mean to. You're already.
Well, yeah, you know, every now and then I get very lucky. Actually, very often.
That's great. So, that Underground album, I thought it was interesting. The instrumentation. How did you decide to? I mean, the most obvious question, I guess, is how did you decide not to have bass?
Right. Well, basically because of Craig Taborn, you know, I had kind of heard him do things like that before. I mean, you know, sort of a different musical focus, but I had heard him in Tim Burns' band. They did things like that. I think I'd heard maybe something else as well, where he was able to basically play the bass parts from the Rhodes. Like he's really able to keep things going in the left hand while also in the right hand, you know, and that had some real advantages in terms of, you know, it always seems to me that the fewer the people are in the band, the more freedom each one person has. So this was kind of a way to have as few people as possible, and also obviously to have the bass player very hooked up with what the piano player was doing.
Right. Yeah.
With a very thick sound, like the sound of the Rhodes and the guitar together, you know, could make this really nice kind of lush thing. Or I mean, it could be very rhythmic and spiky. There are just a lot of. It seemed like there was a potential for something interesting to happen that also wasn't quite in a bag. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't, you know, it might be more normal if you didn't have a bass player, it might be more normal to have like a Hammond B3 sound.
Right. I see what you're saying.
With the guitar. And that's kind of a thing, you know, that's established. Or, you know, having an electric bass player or an acoustic bass player would have put it more in one bag or another. So it just seemed like kind of a good solution to all these problems, but it basically came about just because of what Craig was able to do, and then the way that I could imagine they would all interact, which, you know, it definitely grew over the years, like, you know, the way that Nate and Adam and Craig, you know, and I kind of did enough gigs where it felt like it found a band language.
Yeah.
You know,
definitely. I mean, I hear it. I think it's super cool.
It was nice to be a part of. I mean, I guess it was me that you know had the chance to put it together, but it kind of felt like, wow, okay, there's these amazing musicians and everyone is able to be here right now,
Right.
It's beautiful.
and and you kind of grow together. I mean, as you have a chance. I mean, if you're fortunate enough to have the chance to maybe play the same repertoire with the same people night after night, that's when really interesting things start to happen that you can't even begin to write on the page.
Yeah, I mean, it's that whole band, that being a band kind of thing, having that sound is a real thing.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard to do. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's the just the work environment makes it difficult. Everyone's running around doing a bunch of different things.
Right.
Very few of us, definitely myself included, like there's just not enough work where I could say, well, we have 300 dates a year. If you want to do it, you got to do them all. Like I'm not in a position to say that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So and almost no one is. So everyone's running around doing a bunch of different things. But if you can get a core group of folks that you work with and really define a band sound, it's a very nice situation to be in. I felt like that happened also with the group that Dave Holland led that I was involved in, with Robin Eubanks and
Mm-hmm.
Steve Nelson, and then and Nate was in that as well.
I see.
How do you feel about working with Robin as the other horn in that situation?
It's been a few years now since we really did it, but I found like we really I felt that we found a really unique kind of way of playing together. I mean, there were a fair amount of songs where we would be improvising together, and sometimes without even the rhythm section. And I think we had just heard each other play and done this music over and over and over again, to the point where it felt like maybe we influenced each other's language and just had some kind of extrasensory antenna out. That's it's hard to even explain. But after you just play over and over again with not any musician, but a musician at it, such a high level, then it can find something really interesting. And it's a wonderful sound, just the combination of the trombone and the saxophone. Sometimes I'd be playing tenor, sometimes I'd be playing soprano, but that's a really, really nice blend.
It is.
And maybe not as common a sound as tenor and trumpet.
Right.
Mm. Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Yeah, you can get a lot of unisons, but also you can still get that octave vibe that's kind of like flugelhorn and tenor-esque.
Right. Right. And then the trombone can also double the bass.
Right.
There's just lots of different things that can happen with the vibes too. That was another part of that group. So that just an unusual texture: vibes, trombone, saxophone.
Now, Chris, is there any like crucial moments maybe in your life or on the bandstand that stick out to where, like, from that point on, it's kind of all something changed, or you realized
entire trajectory?
Yeah, just I don't know. Maybe just your mindset, or what, I don't know, just something. Who was it maybe that initiated, or was it just a moment? I'm just curious if you have any moments like that.
Yeah, it's kind of hard for me to say that any one particular moment. I feel like it's been more of a gradual kind of process.
Okay.
But the more situations that I've been in, and the more I've had a chance to kind of see how some of my heroes work from right there,
Yeah.
Has changed my perspective about music and maybe my place in it. It's very hard to describe, but I mean, after you do it for a while, then you realize things slowly change. I mean, something that everyone used to say to me was, because I was always the youngest guy in the band, and it's like, man, you're going to turn around, you're going to be the oldest guy in the band. Nah, okay, whatever. But now it's sometimes true.
Yeah.
It's not always true, but it's like, well, how did that happen? And then realizing that like making the transition from feeling like really I'm just a student, like I'm trying to learn as much as I can from people who know more than I do. I feel like I'm still doing that.
Hmm.
But I realized that as time goes by, there are other like younger musicians who are looking to me in that same way, you know. Um, and it's hard to say exactly how that would make me approach things differently, but it definitely changes your perspective, you know. Um, and it for me, I have the feeling that it's even it's like ever more important that the energy and the music that I put out, that it's something I really believe in, because if I'm in this very enviable position where maybe some young musicians are checking it out and it's influencing them, well, you know I want that to be in a good way. I
Hmm.
want that to go, the values that I really do believe in musically, and which are related to the values that I believe in personally. I mean, it's there's no real separating it.
Right.
Um, that that you want the energy that you put out to be something that you can stand behind.
I get it. Yeah, that's nice. Um, Matt, you were talking earlier about like you wanted to. I think it was. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he was gonna ask you like something like when you go to play with certain people. Do you like who's someone that you really look up
Oh
to?
yeah, someone that maybe like if you get a call from a certain band leader or certain like rhythm section player per se that wants to do a string of gigs or a recording, is there someone that you feel like it's like, oh, I really need to start, really kind of thinking to the next
Yeah.
level, like
Yeah.
like
Yeah. I
musically
mean,
motivate.
I would say that the kind of things that you grow up, like the folks that you grow up idolizing, like
Right.
even if you're in a position of doing it, that never really does go away, you know. Um, I mean,
So
maybe
you have a
I'm
lot of them then.
well, yeah, there's a lot of them. I mean, folks like Herbie and Wayne, those are big folks for me and for a
Hmm.
lot of people. I mean, they're still around,
Yeah.
fortunately. Sonny, I never really have gotten to know, um, unfortunately, but there's
He's
someone I
obviously a
would.
huge influence.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can tell you love Sunny.
Oh yeah. I mean, of course. Um, but like. I mean, I just saw Herbie a few weeks ago. He was performing at there was a tribute to Chick Corea that we did, which unfortunately I didn't have the chance to play with Chick. Well, that was as soon as I got back from San Diego,
Oh,
actually.
okay.
Right.
And Herbie was an unannounced special guest, and I hadn't seen him since, I guess, right before the pandemic. And wow, just still in there and inspiring, and
Yeah.
okay,
Incredible.
that's what you can do. That's what can be done.
Right.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's important to have these folks, I think, that you look up to. You know, um, that even as your perspective does change, and you're in the middle of the same business as they are, and to a certain extent, you're like, wow, that's really something. I aspire to that.
Yeah, it's really cool. What do you have on the horizon? What are some things that you're working on, or um, anything that you've been interested in musically or not musically? I don't know. Just
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff coming up. Um, as I think I mentioned, there's a summer tour with Dave Holland and Zakir Hussain coming up, which those are two guys I look up to very much as well. Um, really, really looking forward to that. Um, I also mentioned that I'm writing this, you know, orchestra for and rhythm section piece, which will get premiered a little, yes,
you said next year.
yeah, a little under a year from now at
Okay.
SF Jazz, and then hopefully we'll have a life beyond that. So that's something I'm working on. There's a new album that'll come out in the spring, which was recorded live at the Village Vanguard a few
Oh,
months
cool.
ago, with Craig Taborn on piano and Scott Conley on bass and Marcus Gilmore on the drums.
Cool.
So I'm very, very excited about that. The idea with that was to, like, after writing album after album after album, where almost all the tunes are my tunes, I went, you know what, let me do tunes that I didn't write.
Mm.
So it's it's a kind of a odd selection of tunes, I guess, in a way. There's a spiritual, there's a song by Mississippi Fred McDowell, like a blues tune that was adapted. There's
Nice.
a Amazonian folk tune, there's a Billy Strayhorn tune, there's a bird tune. There's
Cool.
So, music that I like, but some of it maybe directly in the jazz realm, but other things maybe adapted slightly.
Right.
So there's that. There's other album projects planned for later in the year and everything like that. So, oops, this one I don't have to get.
So what's it like?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No.
I've gone to the Village Vanguard a couple times, and it's just, man, going down those steps just trips me out, because it's like, man, who has walked? I mean, I know who some of the people have walked down those steps, but it's just like, it's wild, man. I mean, what's it like?
The very first time that I played there was, I think I was maybe 19 or something like that, and I was playing with Red Rodney, and they were giving him some kind of award. So a bunch of people were there. In the very two front seats were James Moody and Dizzy Gillespie.
Incredible.
And I'm at the Vanguard, which is just a tiny little basement. It's not fancy at all. It's not like some,
grandiose,
huge,
ballroom.
Exactly. But there's something about it that, like, music just sounds really good in there. And again, like the history of it.
Yeah.
And the vibe in there, and
it certainly has a sound.
The way that it feels is like, this is the living room of jazz.
Yeah, that's a good way of
Absolutely.
putting it.
That's like kind
Very
of
well
where
put.
you hang out. So
I like that.
I was absolutely terrified until the first note, and James Moody had a huge smile on his face. Oh, okay, I'm home. I'm home. I just felt very, very thrilled.
Yeah,
and I still have that feeling whenever I work there. I feel like there's some friendly spirits, and you can see the pictures on the wall of a lot of them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, when I went, I that's a unique place for sure. So that's cool. Matt, you have another question for him?
Are there any plans to work with Snarky Puppy in the future?
I'm trying to think. I don't think there's anything.
Don't you? I think
for the moment.
Didn't you do something with them before?
Right before the pandemic, I was kind of a guest at the festival.
That's what it was.
Right.
Okay, I remember seeing something.
Miami, yeah. So I sat in with them. I sat in with a few different groups, and I'm in touch from time to time with Michael League, and see members of the band. So I'm sure in some form or another, there'll be something going on, but nothing planned at the moment.
What are some now that we're talking about kind of some more modern groups and just the up and comers, what are some people you've been kind of keeping your eye on, or that you see and hear and you find interesting, or that you see around at gigs, at festivals, or what's, if you can think of anyone? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'm kind of trying to think. I feel like, jazz is a community, and a lot of the people that I'm playing with are the people that I
right.
But that's a big circle, really. There's all the people that are in the SF Jazz Collective. There's the people that I'm calling to be in my band. Over the years, a lot of these connections. The fall will be with the Aziza group, which is with Lionel Uleke, who I'm
cool
a fan of as well, and Eric Harland on drums and Dave Holland.
Nice.
I was out with Ruben and Kendrick. So I'm checking out what they're doing.
Sweet.
And all the people that that they play with. I
Yeah.
don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, I feel
You
like
know,
there's some cool stuff happening right now. It's really cool, and I think it's, I mean, especially with the internet now, it's so easy to see,
what's
and
happening.
Access.
yeah, the access is there, which I love. I mean, it's a whole new era for music in general. I mean, just everything really, but
Yeah,
it's interesting to watch kind of happen.
yeah. And I mean, we've all been stuck inside for a while. Now it's opening up, and I think people need music and they
Yeah,
need
they're hungry.
Absolutely.
connection. So it feels like lately there's been maybe a little added energy around
Yeah, I've
around.
even noticed it just at gigs. Yeah, you're right. I mean, people, oh, I'm so glad you guys are playing. Like, this is
Right.
wonderful. Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. I've felt that for sure.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah.
I feel like I haven't really named names too much as much, but you know,
Oh, no, it's
uh,
all right. I was just
Yeah.
curious. I
I'm
mean,
not even sure where to begin.
yeah,
There's so many great musicians on the scene.
no, it's cool. Yeah, yeah. What do you? I'm curious. When you're at home, do you practice, or do you practice only on the road? How do you approach like staying in shape musically?
Yeah.
And
It's very hard to practice on the road. I mean,
okay,
that's almost impossible. So being at home and just my frame of mind as well. I feel like
yeah,
it's I'm able to focus in a certain way at home that it's difficult when I'm on the road, especially when you're traveling every day. There's no way.
right,
Just-
okay,
so it's when I'm home is when I do more of my writing and more of my practicing.
okay, that makes sense.
Um, and yeah, I definitely work a lot. Um, writing takes a huge amount of time for me. And keeping in shape on the horn and feeling like you're growing as an instrumentalist. And
Right.
I feel like the level that you see people get to. I mean, I remember a few years ago seeing Wayne Shorter in some situation that wasn't his band. It wasn't, it wasn't even really his thing, but he played like three notes on the soprano, and there was so much meaning
Mm,
in those three notes. Like, you know, how do you practice that? It's a
mm,
challenge, but that's really the level to aspire to. It's
yeah.
just, I mean, past just being able to technically execute
Yeah.
certain things. It's like, having that much control over the timbre. I mean, that's one thing about the saxophone too, is you only have one note at a time, basically. I mean, you can do some false
Right.
fingering,
Right. Right.
some harmonics, but basically it's like a voice.
Hmm.
You got one note at a time, and only for the amount that you have the breath. So, but within that, there's so much that's possible, and you don't even necessarily realize how much it is until you hear what can be done in the hands of a master. So it's kind of day after day trying to find that stuff,
Hmm.
which is so kind of you know not necessarily easy to figure out what to work on to get to that. I mean, you can there's always technical things that can always be better, but that's really the most interesting area for me. So that's what I feel like I'm constantly trying to figure out a way to work on.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. I see what you mean. Um, I had a question I was going to ask. I just thought when you were mentioning this, and I just forgot.
Yeah.
I'm curious, compositionally, what's your process on composing? Do you sit down
Oh,
in front of a piano,
That's what it was.
or do you maybe think of an idea on the tenor first, or
Yeah, because I know you play piano.
Yeah. I really do use the piano a lot.
That's what I wanted to ask. So thank you, Matt. You nailed
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
What's your relationship with the piano and composing? Kind of like he's saying.
I mean, the piano, I feel like, is a great tool for me to, like, in some ways, even though I'm not a virtuoso on it at all, but in some ways it can sometimes feel like a more satisfying thing to practice on, because you can hear all the parts at once.
Yeah,
You can just
I could see
you
that.
don't you don't have to imagine that you're part of a band. You can
Right.
actually hear it all. So so I find myself just messing around on
Mm,
it a lot, and then often that turns into writing tunes
mm.
and or arrangements or whatever, or just exploring harmony.
Yeah.
but I use it a lot as in my writing. I mean, now more and more, I probably hear things in my head and then might just write directly into Sibelius. If it's a large group thing, then I find myself just kind of working within Sibelius a
Hmm.
lot. But of course, when I want to just check something out and see what it sounds like, it's often at the piano.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
cool.
And then there's, I mean, I find just going for a walk and letting it and just
Mm.
thinking about it and like, okay, well, how should this go? Maybe it needs to start with this.
Oh, I like that.
Um,
Okay. So you almost
things,
kind of step away from it.
yeah. Sometimes going to sleep and waking up the next morning, you have
Oh,
the
okay.
answers to, you know, this is sort of what I was saying about trying to make sure that I build in enough time when I know I have a deadline that I can go through
Mm.
these because I know that something that's really obvious in retrospect is like it doesn't hit me for a while. It's like, of course, it needs this.
And if you're rushing it to get, I see what you mean.
Yeah, then you would just kind of it just wouldn't be fully baked.
So you
Yeah,
want to include the time to fully cook it.
yeah,
I get you. Oh, okay, interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, definitely. That's a good little tidbit. I should do more of that.
I mean, you know, it's a luxury sometimes. Sometimes you just don't have the time.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, actually, that leads me to something I wanted to ask you. I'm curious, are you doing the every day-to-day thing, booking gigs, or I'm sure you have people helping you, but like
Yeah.
how I find myself just constantly doing all this stuff
No,
and
I am. I'm very, very fortunate that I have a manager. I have a booking agent
okay.
in a record company. So a lot of that I'm not doing.
Okay, cool.
But I am like choosing which ones to accept,
Ah, okay.
and then finding a band that's able to do it,
Okay,
and
so a
choosing the
version of it.
music to play, and sometimes making decisions about, okay, well, hey, there are these flights. Which one do you think we should take?
Ah,
So there's plenty to do in that department, but
right.
Sure.
but not nearly as I'm just very, very fortunate.
That's great.
Kind of similar to the social media thing that every now and then I can maybe say something, but I'm not doing it all the time,
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
which leaves me more time to just focus on trying to get that sound of one note.
I love it. I love it. That's great. That's really cool. I'm trying to think if I have. I mean, don't let us keep you. If I hope we're not.
Yeah, I should probably go soon
Okay.
because I think that
Yeah, we could wrap this up. I mean, once again, Chris, thanks for your time.
Thank
and
you so much.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
when you came to state, I was so excited because just that was one of the best master classes we've had or guest artists we've had there, and it was just nice. I think everyone was really into it, so it was really cool to hear you talk. And I just got to tell you, your solo cadenza on what is this song called? I Hear Rhapsody
Oh, okay.
was so great.
Oh, thanks.
I really liked it. I started playing that tune a bunch after, and I was like, I don't know, it stuck with me. So that was really cool.
Cool.
But
Oh, thanks.
Matt, do you have anything else you want to ask him?
Yeah. Do you have any words of wisdom for the future of this music?
Hmm. I mean, so many things are kind of hard to predict, but I try and keep in mind that basically, I think everybody has been saying that it's dying out from the time it was born. So, hold on a second. Hey, Anna. So I'm doing an interview, but I'll be done in just a minute. Okay. All right. Where was I? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was a biography of Louis Armstrong that I remember reading, and there was a review from a newspaper of a gig he had done in like 1929 or something, and it said, "This music will never last. The only people that listen to it are students and other musicians."
Yeah,
And I went, "Yeah, so nothing has changed, and it's still here."
I know. I love that whole idea, like of exactly what you're saying, cracks me up because I honestly I feel the total opposite. And I feel like, especially with the internet, more
Right.
people have access to this than ever.
I mean, it's worldwide.
Yeah, and if
I
you
think that's true. I mean, I think one of the big challenges for musicians now is how to monetize it.
Right.
Because you can, you know, people are hearing it.
Right.
I think, yeah, maybe in bigger numbers than ever. You know, it doesn't always help you pay the rent, and
Yeah.
that's a big challenge for young musicians that I don't always, you know, it's hard to know what to say always, and you just have to be smart
Yeah.
and willing to do what you have to do to make it work. But you know, it can work.
Hmm.
It can work. Um, it's amazing to me, you know, like me and my friends, we all somehow managed to make a living and pay mortgage and
Yeah.
whatever. And yet, if you go out on the street, you know, maybe some people have heard of who Miles Davis is, you
Hmm.
know, but they have no idea what we're doing.
Right.
But there's enough people that do that you got to keep on doing it,
Yeah,
you know.
I agree. And I've noticed that anyone that studies music or takes an interest in it, whether you're just trying to play guitar and you're on YouTube or whatever it is,
Yeah.
the path, no matter what, ends up leading back to all these guys that we love. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
no matter,
Because it's music itself,
yeah,
you know.
yeah,
I mean, there's so much in it, and there's so many possibilities. I mean, there's also a reason that I think jazz musicians have been in some way involved in most of the popular music
yeah,
that's come out of America. You
yeah,
know, the folks that are on the Motown records, you
hmm,
know, even now in the hip hop world, you know,
yeah,
you got there's
definitely, yeah,
always
Absolutely.
all these connections because basically, you know, if you're really a master at playing jazz, you could play anything.
I agree.
You can do anything. And it's just that this is the music that gives you the most freedom.
Mm.
And that attitude towards it, you know, is very alive
Hmm.
and you know is built on things that are going to make it stay alive, you know, that it's willing to change, you know. I mean, jazz means so many things to so many
Right.
different people, you know. It could be anything from Louis Armstrong to Kenny G to, you know, Ornette Coleman to, it's, I mean, it's a huge thing. It's
Yeah.
hard to know where it begins and ends. And I think that's one huge strength of it, is that it's more like a way of thinking about music at a certain point, you know, than it is one
One style, right? Yeah.
changing language,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I couldn't have said it better myself. So I think that's a great note to end on. So thank you, Chris, for your time and
Thank
for
you.
all you do, for all your music. And
Thanks.
we appreciate you so much. So,
Thank you. Hope to see you again soon.
all right. Have a good day.
All right. Thanks.
care.
See ya.
A jive symphonic funk of off-tone melodies and open-tone vibrations. It's life.